Dear viewers, welcome to our Chai Saati. Before we start our program, like we do every week, we'll give a short progress report on the travels of record-breaking Turkish-American sportsman Erdem Eric. Erdem now is in the middle of the Pacific in a small boat going from North America to Asia, crossing the massive ocean solely by human muscle power. On November 19th, he completed 4,000 miles, the midpoint of his journey, now rowing the next 4,000 miles to Asia. He started his journey, the Great Pacific Challenge, on June 22nd from California. He had 15 Guinness World Records at the start, adding 3 more in his journey. During his incredible expedition, he encountered songs, was visited by birds, followed by a shark, gave lectures, and had other adventures. You can follow his daily progress at erdenerich.com and support his cause, Ocean Recovery Alliance, which raises awareness about the catastrophic effect of the plastic on the ocean. Today, we have a unique guest, Judy Light Ayyıldız, a most prolific writer and educator whose whole life is like a very unusual book. Our topic, Appalachia to Istanbul, a rare connection of 2 far lands, which also seems like a rare union. The union is about a beautiful love story, an enduring marriage of 60 years with 3 beautiful children. This was not a simple marriage. It was the union of a very talented writer, Judy, author of 11 books from the Appalachian region of the United States, and a bright-eyed Turkish surgeon, Dr. Judy Ayyıldız, from Kırklareli, Turkey. The time was during the heady days of the new Turkish Republic, established after heroic wars and struggles. At this moment, I would like to pause and express my deepest condolences to Judy and her family about the recent passing away of her dear husband. Vedi Bey was a great community leader, a compassionate doctor, and above all, a husband, father, and a grandfather. Judy is a writer, a poet, an educator, a performer, a woman of so many talents. Impossible to list all of them in the short time we have. She's a graduate of Foreign Writing Program in Marshall University. She taught at all levels in the U.S. and in Turkey. She is a prolific author of 5 different genres. Her work is internationally published and translated. She was the editor of Artemis, a journal dedicated to social justice for many years, and she was the founder of the Blue Ridge Writers Conference. Her writings were published in many U.S., Turkish, and other international journals and anthologies, and she received awards and prizes from many organizations. In order to appreciate Judy's many talents and works, I strongly recommend that you check her website, judylightayyıldız.com. We thank her very much for taking the time of her busy schedule today and being with us on our program. I also thank our technical team, Bülent Büyükgezici and Ezgi Esen for their invaluable support. Let us now hear Judy's wonderful saga of her amazingly full life. Okay, welcome. I will start with some questions. How did your interest in writing and performing start? And give us some background on your life in Appalachia region, and tell us about the Appalachian a little bit. That's a very nice part of the U.S.
Well, I will say that I was born wanting to sing and wanting to write. And when I was in the second grade, there was a time that a school teacher told us to go home and write a Christmas poem, and that we should write about everything around our home. And I was delighted in the second grade, and I came back with 2 pages full of my modest home and the 12-Pole Creek River and the chickens and the railroad and the industrial plant and just on and on and on. And I made it all rhyme because my father was also a poet and journalist, and he would have us write things that rhyme. And the teacher thought my parents wrote it. I said, no, it's me. When she realized it was me, I gave my first reading in public at the school, because she took me around to all 8th grades of the school. And the teacher said, you know, you might not have much money right now, but what you have is a talent, and use it and keep writing. And I was so excited that I could do something that even the rich kids in town could not do. And so that inspired me too. So I've been doing it ever since. I haven't stopped since then.
It really comes from the inside. I mean, you have the urge, which is marvelous.
Yes, it's a gift. You're born with that. Some people are technical, and as we have discussed, I am not technical, but I love create.
Yes, you are. You are. Well, it's all in the family too. I see the kids. Your father was creative, and the kids are very creative. So we'll talk about the kids. And then you went to Holland's writing program, and then you advanced. So how did you meet with eBay? I mean, how did you two meet?
I was at the end of my junior year at Marshall University and majoring in music. And I had some girlfriends that were telling me about this handsome young Turkish doctor. And I had never met a Turk before. And so I arranged to be there when he visited. And I was very taken with him from the very beginning. And I tried to impress him. And I'm sure I looked all of 13 years old. But anyway, during the summer, I was there and he was there, and we walked and we talked. He didn't have any money. I didn't have any money, but we had a lot to talk about. And so we met in April. We married in November. And we had our first child the following November and started our family.
How old were you?
21.
21. My God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
How romantic. So you married, and when did you go meet his family? When did he meet your family? How did the families take this marriage?
Well, it was a mixed response. My mother loved Vidi from the beginning, as I loved his mother from the beginning. And I had written to his mother, Adelette, and told her about myself. And she had translator write me back, and she said, as a matter of fact, that it is God's will, because I dreamed about my son is going to marry an American girl that has red hair, and she's a school teacher. I dreamed it only last night, then I got your letter today. So I don't question these things. So my mom was fully supporting of it also, but my dad was terrible about it, and he disowned me. And unfortunately, he had a heart attack a year later, so we never reunited really. And that was very difficult, but I knew that I was doing the right thing. I knew that, no question. I said, Judy is the best man I've ever met in my life. He's always going to have my back. He will always love me. And I was not wrong about that.
So when did you go to Turkey after a baby came in the next November? What year was that?
Let's see, we married in 21. I guess it was 19, let's see. Anyway, we were married 6-7 years, and we had a second baby that was born in May, and this was in July, and that was Kamal. And Judy was talking about Turkey with great longing, and he wanted to show me. And I said, well, Judy, let's just go. He said, but we have a baby. I said, they have babies in Turkey. We'll just go. And he said, but we don't have any money. I said, yes, but you're a doctor, and that means you can borrow money. So we borrowed money, and we went to Turkey, and I bought presents for every friend and family, and we took a couple huge trunks of stuff. We went to Turkey, we stayed a month, and I was absolutely fascinated from the beginning. I have often said, first I fell in love with my husband, then I fell in love with his mother, because she had already come when we were living in Buffalo, New York, and I was teaching full time in this snowy city. And she came to take care of us and our baby, Kent. And she cooked, and she was absolutely wonderful. Fell in love with her. And then I fell in love with the country. And I really did. And it never failed me. Turkey is a fascinating adventure. And you can't just go to Istanbul, or just go to Ankara, or just go to Diyarbakir, or just take the Blue Cruise. Every hour of every day, you can hit the road in any direction, and you will have a great adventure. And the people were so wonderful. They really accepted me, and they called me our American bride. They called me the bride until last time I visited. I said, when does this bride stuff end? They said, oh, it never ends.
That's funny. Yeah, that never ends. I mean, we have our Turkish community has 3 brides of probably 60, 70 years of standing, but they're called the brides.
Yeah.
3 of them, 3 American women married the Turks, and we love them, but they are the brides. And so
I will tell you this, that I have many questions, especially from Turkish people when I make talks and things. They said, how did you have such a close relationship with your mother-in-law? I said, from the beginning we did, because even though we are different ages and we have different environment. Everything about us is different. But the most important things were alike. She was really a woman who had independence for herself. She was well educated because she came from a family that had money and heritage, and she was creative, and she always accepted people, no problem. And she was one of the most fascinating women that I had ever met.
That's wonderful. That is so important to have the best relations with their mother-in-law. It's really. I remember I did interview Gwen Sanjar, her husband who had the Nobel Prize, you know, and her mother-in-law lived in near Batman, Eastern Turkey. And the first time she saw Gwen, she said, "My daughter," to her, kızım. And she said, "That's it. That sealed the love and trust and a good, wonderful feeling." That's amazing how much mothers play a role even after the daughters leave the family. So they lived in Kırklareli, and that is very close to Europe side. And they probably were refugees from Balkans, I would think.
They were refugees from the Balkans, but Adalet was part of the Giray Tartars.
Yeah.
And they went to Crimea, then they were kicked out of the Crimea, and they fled to the Balkans, and then came down into, it wasn't Kırklareli they came to. Her grandfather was an aga, who the Sultan, and I checked on all of this, everything.
My God, yeah.
But he gave land to people, and they became an aga, and they collected the taxes. So once a year he would take the taxes to Istanbul. So she was raised in that family, and then Vidi's mother, she had one sister. Her sister married one of the Ottoman princes. He was not a direct line from the Sultan, but he was a direct line from one of the Sultan's concubines. But that still made him an Ottoman prince in standing. So she married him, and the mother wanted Adalet to marry also a prince or something like that. But instead, she married the blacksmith's son. So she kind of went through what I went through when I married Vidi. Her mother totally disowned her for quite a long time because the blacksmith had come originally from Tashkent and had traveled all across Anatolia and ended up in Thracia. But she finally would kind of accept Adalet, but never totally. It was a very difficult life for her. But anyway, after Adalet got married, she joined the revolution with her husband.
Yes. Tell us about the book, The 40 Thorns, which I think is spectacular. Tell us about how you wrote the book. Well, how did you get involved with the history, Turkish history? And Adalet's life was amazing too.
When Adalet was 91 years old, she called me one day and she said, "Judy," she said, "you have to come to Turkey, spend the summer with me. I'm going to die soon. And I want to tell you my story." I said, "Okay." And she said, "I am not an important person, but my story is a very important story." So, and my husband said, "Well, you have to go. She invited you and not me, so go." I went, and my nephew, who had already been here, and we helped him through college, and he ended up being a translator and organizer for the American consulate for almost 30 years. But he happened to be available. He translated everything she said. So in the beginning, I thought, well, she told me an awful lot of stuff. Most of it sounds made up because it sounds too fantastic to be true. And I'll just write a nice little booklet about her life. So then a year later, she did die, not quite a year later.
Oh.
And so we went to the funeral, and my book opens with the funeral, and then it's a flashback. But after that, I realized what a fantastic story. And I spent 10 years writing the book. I researched everything she told me, and it turned out that everything, absolutely everything she told me was true. I researched it. I found the places. I found the people. I interviewed all over Turkey. I took pictures. I did research on the wars, and everything that I did just revealed, well, the book is very thick, and it's not only a story of a strong woman's successful life, but it was a difficult life. It's also a journey book because her husband became governor of different provinces. And so they traveled all over Turkey, from Kars to the Aegean Sea, to the Mediterranean. They traveled everywhere that he would be established. And she became a teacher. She became a public health worker in the new community and state. And of course, they were both devoted to Ataturk and the democracy. And it was also a story that involved other countries of the world. It involved her husband's first cousin, Fuatu Mai. Fuatu Mai was the first public health national officer for the Republic. He later became a congressman. He was a journalist. And all of the stories that she told me were so true. And it was like wonderful adventure. And then one day I said, well, the book is finished now. How am I going to get this published? And God was with me because I was doodling on the computer. I went to I was looking for an agent. It took me, there's this Turkish agent. And I linked up with her. She loved the book. She took it to Rimzi Kitabevi, and they bought it and they translated it. Leyla Özcengiz was my translator, and then became my wonderful tour with that book. And I was invited everywhere, and for 3 years it was like a honeymoon.
Really, it's a fantastic story. But the thing is, you gave the feel of the war. I mean, she was in the middle of the War of Independence, and which is a huge, huge struggle under horrible conditions. And there were passages there I just had to hold my breath because they were so unreal, you thought, but they were real. And so it's rare a book is published in English that describes the War of Independence. Most of the time, the interpretations of the Turkish War of Independence are done through the eyes of our adversaries, to tell the truth. If you look at Wikipedia, it is so biased, so warped. And there are not any books like this which seem like fictional, but it isn't. So it is really a rare book, which should be. Is it available through Amazon?
Yes, it is. And
Yeah.
it's available on Smashwords in the online form, what they call them. I can't think of it right now. The books that
Yeah, ebook.
ebooks.
Ebook. Yeah, that's
Yes.
Yeah, I
And,
have a copy, but I have so many books in this house. I was trying to find it. I found the Ottomans Were My Ancestors, which I loved, your other children's book, which I have it on my table. So it really is a unique book, which probably should be brought to light frequently because it's very well written, and it is so real of what happened during those days. Another thing is Adalet married for love, didn't she? She didn't wait for a görücü style, how parents.
no,
So tell us.
they had engaged her to a wealthy family. It was an Arabic family, actually, and she was only 14. And she went out to a gathering and she lost that diamond ring that he had given her. And she said, I was so happy I lost that ring. I couldn't find it. She was not interested in money. So she said, because it was a sign. She always looked at signs. She taught me how to read the Turkish coffee cups. She was really good at that. Her mother was a reader, and all she did is she sat and gave advice to people. But she was very happy to break this engagement, and she saw losing the ring was a sign. But then when she met, she didn't meet Burhan, she saw him on stage, because what Dr. Fuat Omay was doing, he was bringing to the stage many plays that talked about hygiene and the New Republic and the language and the history of the Turks. And people would go to that. And Burhan was an actor, and he had a beautiful voice. So she fell in love with him from his being on the stage. And his father was the blacksmith. So every time her father would go to the blacksmith, she would tag along, and she fell in love with story at that time. And by the way, Adalet was a wonderful storyteller herself. And the blacksmith used to be the place, it was a focal place for every community, because everyone traveled, everyone needed wheels and horseshoes fixed, and they came and they had tea and they sat around the blacksmith's forge and they gossiped while things were being fixed. And so here's this little girl sitting here. So she fell in love with the power of story. And she's absolutely right, because the Turkish story of the revolution and reestablishing the country, many bad things happened to many, many people, but many bad things happened to the Turks. The Turks were utterly destroyed, and no one could have thought they would rise up out of the ashes and build a great country. But because of the spirit and Ataturk's ability to harness the spirit of all the people, and he did, and it happened, and it was a miracle. It was truly a miracle.
It is a miracle, yes, we agree, that's true. But so it was quite a shock to the family, of course, like her marriage probably at that time, but she symbolized what was coming, the women's freedom, women's rights, women's making her own life. She kind of symbolized the new reforms, but they were not there at that time. It was quite early. Yeah, the years were like beginning of 1900, I would think, before very. That's is 40 Thorns your first book, or you had other books before
No,
that?
I have 11 books altogether, and I started out as a poet, which is really a good thing because people say, oh, your poetry is so lyrical. And of course it is, because a poet's writing that book, describe all the imagery and stuff. But I was teaching writing everywhere for a long time. And so a writer friend of mine joined with me. We wrote 3 books that were published by national textbook companies on how you can teach writing, for example. Then I wrote another book that my husband illustrated because he was a painter. Some of my ancestors are Ottomans and Turks. And this came because my grandson didn't know anything about Turkey. And so I wanted to explain it to him. So I made it in that way. Then that book sold out 3 times. And it's still looking for a publisher again. But I gave up on that for the time being. But people, grown-ups, were buying that book because they were going to visit Turkey and they didn't know anything about who are the Turks, what are the Turks. And they would buy my book and then they would have at least a beginning of an understanding.
Yeah.
So that's how it sold out.
Yeah.
And so I have books of poetry. I also had a very serious episode with Guillain-Barré syndrome, which paralyzed me. So it took me several years to recover. I have fully recovered on that. And I've shared that story with another book. So that's a memoir. And the novel. Then my last book is another book of poetry called Intervals, Appalachia to Istanbul.
Yes.
So the intervals were what happened there, what happened here, what happened in between. And actually, the Appalachian people are not very different from the Turks in this way. They're very generous. They will give you, for example, one day I was having tea with a friend of mine, and she said, she served me, and then I tasted the tea, and I said, oh, I take my tea sade. I don't like sugar with coffee. So she said, oh, I'll exchange it. Later on, much later on, she told me, she said, Judy, I gave you the last sugar I had in the house. I always take sugar in my coffee, but you were the guest. So the guest gets, and the Turks, you know, save back special things for guests. And Appalachian people will do that too. And they love you for your heart. I just found so much resemblance, really.
At one time, there were a possibility of relationship of Turks. There were Melunjans. Are you familiar with the Melunjans?
Yes, the Melunjans lived very close to where I live here in Virginia, as a matter of fact, about an hour away near Lynchburg. Yeah, this is true. There was a shipwreck, and then apparently there was some courtships and interventions, interworkings of people that produced Melunjans.
There was a lot of theories on that, and there was a young fellow who wrote a book on it, but it never really, we never followed it through, and it was never totally got out this whole story. They did some DNA work, I think perhaps and that didn't prove much. Anyway, yeah, that may be some similarities there. Who knows?
It could be that, but I think, why is it that way? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm looking at the amount of work. I mean, in addition to authoring 11 books, also you were a performer at one time. You were in music, and then you did so much teaching and articles. How did you manage? I mean, you are absolutely so busy. I look at your website. I look at the interview. I'm exhausted just reading it. But now you have a full life at home. A surgeon's wife is not easy job because the surgeon is always there for 15 hours and comes home exhausted. And then you have 3 kids to raise. How did you manage the home, the motherhood, the extremely active literary life? So you must be very efficient. You must have a very efficient way of doing things. How did you manage?
First of all, my health has always been good. I have lots of energy naturally, and that stayed with me. And I took my children with me everywhere. And if I had to give a reading, I took my children. If I performed, I took my children. And that turned out okay. They enjoyed it, and they were very open people. They didn't have to be shy. And all of them are artists too. And but you have to believe that life is a gift. And they say you work with what you have. And so I had some ability for creativity, and I used it always. I gave up being a musician when I decided to be a full-time writer because I said, oh my goodness, I can't be a mother. My kids weren't grown up yet. I can't be a mother and a teacher and a singer and a writer. And because I had done everything I wanted to do with singing and directing, I organized a choir and took them to Poland one time when Poland was still under the Soviet Union. I did stuff like that. But I will say that I was lucky. My husband never said, oh, you're spending too much time away from home. He liked good food, and sometimes I cooked good food and sometimes I didn't, and he never complained. He just thought that everything that I did was wonderful, and I thought everything he did was wonderful. And I never said, oh, you're spending too much time away from home. Because I knew that he was a doctor when I married him. He knew that I was a singer when he married me and that I wrote poems.
I saw your picture on the Bosphorus when you were very young. What a romantic photo it was. Wonderful, wonderful couple. But the thing is, it's such a contrast that all of a sudden you got the Guillaume Barré, and I read the book, Nothing But Time. How did, such an active woman, so much loving life and everything, and then you are stuck with that disease? So how long it lasted? 3 years?
Well, I was paralyzed from the beginning of the summer until the fall, paralyzed from the waist down. But I went to rehab for 6 weeks, and it's because of how I am. I believe that within all of us, we have a spirit. And I believe that that spirit is whatever we call God. And that I believe that it lives within us. And I believe that we can harness that energy and we can live by that energy. And I knew that for example, when I was in the hospital, I will never let anybody come in my room if they're going to say, "Oh, you poor thing," because that's negative. I wouldn't stand for any negativity. I said, I'm going to get back up on my feet. And eventually I did. Then it took a couple more years to where I was walking without any braces, anything, but I was progressing. And I didn't mind when I got into a wheelchair, because that was so much better than being paralyzed on the bed. And then the braces were so much better than the wheelchair. And then gradually, but I don't have any of that now.
Thank God.
Because I just believe that you work with what you've got.
Exactly. That's a fantastic spirit. I guess they never found what the reason was. I mean, they really don't know.
They don't know what they call it. It triggers it because they think it is a reaction to a virus that maybe gets in your system. But I didn't have any flu shots or anything like that. Or bacteria. They said I will never know what caused mine.
Yeah. Anyway, that's another amazing experience. And then now you have wonderful 3 kids, and they all have nice Turkish names too in the middle.
Yeah, we gave them one Turkish, one English name, except for Kent actually means
a Turkish name.
Yeah, it actually means township.
It's the city.
Vedibe Kent. Kent, and then the middle child is an Irish name, Kevin, linked with Kamal.
Yes.
And the last one is Karen Perrion. So they all have the K's.
They do. That's right. Very nice. Very nice. And tell me quickly, I know we're taking too much of your time. Tell me what the kids are doing. And they seem to be very creative too, from what I gathered.
Well, Kent is a history major. He went to Turkey to get his master's degree in Turkish history and Ataturk studies. While he was there, they encouraged him to get a degree in films. They came back to the States and got a master's of fine arts in film. So he's been interested in documentary studies since then, had a career, had a business. Kamal is a painter and a poet, and he's got one book called The Cistern, which is about Istanbul. And I was the painting in back of me here is a whirling dervish, and so he took that picture of a dervish in Istanbul, then he added paint to it and all sorts of stuff. So it's here. And Karen is married a food chef, and they have a creative foods business, and they cook and deliver healthy foods to people. They have a big following. So they're all engaged in stuff like that, and
creative work.
Very independent, yeah. So that's
wonderful. Now, you have to write your own life.
I have finished. Not to cut in. I'm finishing a novella, which was going to be a first chapter. It turned into a novella, and I would say probably 2/3 of it has already been published. It has already won parts of it first prizes for stuff. So that all tells me that the whole thing is going to be published. And now I'm giving my extra time. My husband was sick a total of 4 or 5 years, and that was my first duty at that time. And I was very happy to help him through that period of time. I don't know what to call it, at the last chapter of his story. And now I'm going to do what he would want me to do. I have written 7 stories of his life already as a young kid growing up all over Turkey. And then this novella, and I've written a rough draft of our life. You don't just write your story writes itself after a certain period of time. And why do you write a story? You investigate a period of your life and you say, what is the international truth in this? And you find what is a lasting truth? Because if there's no lasting truth, there's no reason for the public to read the story. So it has to link to other human experiences, not only in this history, but throughout all history. Yeah. Human beings really don't change all that much, except in technology and the new things they learn to do, and medicine and those things. We still love, and we still get sick, we still die, we still have mothers and fathers. Yeah. And so it's a human story.
So we're looking forward to those new books. And are all your books now on the Amazon? I mean, the poetry books?
All of them are, and actually all of my ancestors are Ottomans and Turks. And I'll show you some.
I have a copy of it, yes.
Covers. This is the Ottomans and Turks book. And these are all my husband's illustrations in here. But this is on Amazon. 40 Thorns, Intervals, all the books are on Amazon, and I just put them all there. When my husband got sick, I said, I'm not going to be able to market books because I can't get out of the house. So I put all the books on Amazon. So that's where they are. They're all in one place. Yeah.
Anyway, before we finish, I want to tell you, we have a very ambitious young woman who is promoting the Turkish coffee. I had a program with her, Gizem, and she's planning to open a coffee shop in Alexandria. And I was thinking, perhaps you should have your books there so that she can also sell them. That would be wonderful. You know, anything that's related to Turkey and such as your works would be a big addition to a nice coffee shop promoting Turkish coffee and the Turkish desserts. I'm going to talk to her because that would be an excellent way to, promote them to the public. And,
we used to have a Turkish organization here, and for a festival, I read coffee cups, and there was a line all the way around the block. We made a lot of money for our charitable.
She can come and do a presentation because she did a documentary in Turkey, different types of Turkish coffee in different cities. And also it has the tremendous background of historical cities like Mardin and Diyarbakir and different Kayseri. So I will connect you both. She's doing a promotion in New York and did one at the Turkish embassy. Anyway, I was thinking about that, connecting you and getting the books more out into the open at the public at all times. Amazon is good, but it would be a great way of showing how lovely those books were. Well, listen, I don't want to take too much of your time. Do you have anything to say to finish the program? What would you recommend to the young writers, for example? And
I would recommend to the young writers to just keep a journal, write down anything that moves your heart, and then you start exploring what is true about this event. So, and you have to look look long and hard at that and just keep writing if you want to write. And you can get in touch with me too. I taught so many young people, and it was a joy. But I want to thank you and your audience for giving me this opportunity to have time with you and what you're doing, Oya. It's an honor to be with you. I've known you so many years. We go way back. I
Yes,
won't tell you how old I am, but you were someone I looked up to. You were always in the center. You were always trying to do anything that you can to promote the Turkish people.
Yes.
And
We tried. But you were wonderful coming to our meetings, and I remember you did a program at the assembly, and you did work with all the Turkish organizations, the Atatürk Society. I saw Özge even interviewing you, and we were so proud of you, and we loved you so much. And I hope we'll do it in the future, more programs. And now we are technically experts. And we thank the Ezgi and Bülent Bey for connecting us.
it's wonderful. Yes.
And thank you so much. And we'll stay in touch. And let us know when you come to DC. At least we can get together.
Let us know when you come to the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Yes, I'd love to. I look, I checked on Appalachia before, and then I looked at Kırklareli.
Yeah.
And Kırklareli is gorgeous.
Yeah.
I was amazed they had beaches on the Black Sea. Gorgeous place. And then Appalachia is something else with those wonderful forests and hills. And it is. So I learned a lot as I worked on this program. And thank you again very much. And we'll stay in touch.
We will. Thank you. And thank your audience too.
Thank you.
Thank you.